Hey, how you doing? This is Comicbook Team Up with RJ, myself, and I almost said Danny Aeillo. Fabrizio Aeillo. Yeah, Danny Aeillo is going to be on. And we're talking about you launched Horace H. Hoover last Friday, the third issue. And I'm looking through my stack because I'm not just a fan, I'm a customer. I've been making no bones about how much I love this comic. So I just wanted to let people know it is your own comic now, your own.
Yeah.
What is the name of your Gloomy Wood?
Gloomy Wood, yeah. It yeah, coming up with an imprint for a comic book is funny. Like you spend a lot of time with the comic book itself. It's almost like I don't say an afterthought, but it has a lot of oh yeah, that's right. I threw some extra stuff that I, accrued over the years.
Thank you.
But Gloomy Wood was interesting. It's based on Dante's Inferno, like a slight different interpretation of Dark Wood. So the logo is like a hand that looks like a tree, which I thought was kind of appropriate. So if you look at the back, you see a bigger version of the logo.
Yes, the logo is really cool.
Yeah, so
I got to say, you and Brian have my two favorite logos. Brian's is Brain Rot Comics with that werewolf that he drew when he was a little kid.
or bloody
Bloody Weirdo. Bloody
Yeah.
Weirdo. Yeah, Bloody Weirdo. And I just fell in love with that. I showed my wife and she thought it was adorable. Hey, who's this guy?
My apologies, fellas.
I know it.
Enter the Dragon, and I completely lost track of time.
Yeah, I know the sundial up there in the woods. It wasn't working. You got to get it tuned. It's okay. It's okay. I forgot to show up one week. So RJ, I know you know Fabrizio Aeillo. He's been on. I think he's been on a comic book team up before.
Yep.
And Fabrizio he just launched issue number 3. This is issue number 1. This is issue number 2, and issue number 3 of Horace H. Hoover. I freaking love this comic. Would you describe it as a superhero or no?
I mean, that is tricky. I feel like there are elements to make him a superhero. I don't think he's
got the costume. He kind of has powers in a roundabout way.
Yeah. So is he's not just like a strict detective. So he does have powers. He does fight monsters, and I think like his character is like a superhero. So the way he talks and how he approaches things, and how he investigates. So. Yeah, we'll say superhero. Occult superhero, is that a thing?
Yeah, he's an occult investigator. And I would describe this... First off, I love the setting. The setting is in like 1930s Manhattan, but it's also like fantasy 1930s Manhattan,
Yeah. I love the 20s and 30s in New York because you have all that supernatural mysticism and tarot card readings and seances and like Egyptian stuff. It's all at that time period. So it just gives like visually a lot to play with. You can pop in somewhere and look at and see something interesting or something that would, pique somebody's interest.
I don't mean to break into the conversation, but you should look into 18th century, Victorian England, because there's some weird stuff going on there. That would just translate so well over into this world, I think.
Yeah, you could have Horace's father who wears a diving bell.
Yeah, that's a good point. I honestly, I hadn't considered England or Europe. I know far less, but that would be kind of cool to maybe do a flashback or some scene, setting things up.
Yeah, I've just been diving into it lately, and there's some really, really weird stuff about they used to take pictures with dead people because it would be the only picture they would have with them, right? And things like that. You could introduce ghosts and the pictures with that way. And there was another one where people started dying over and over again from mysterious diseases, and they didn't realize it was because their wallpaper had arsenic and lead in it, all these kinds of things. These really weird stuff going on.
What you said about the taking pictures of dead people, my grandmother, she lived into her 90s, and I think she was 94. Or we got a letter from Ireland. My grandmother was from Ireland, and my mother opened it up, and it was a picture of her brother just sitting in a chair dead because they wanted her to get a picture of him. So it's a letter. Your brother died. He lived to this age. They didn't talk as much. And here's a photograph of your dead brother. My mother was like, "Do I give this to Nana?" Like she's like going through dementia. So she voted on, and I was like, "It's not yours to." She's still a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
90 years old. She doesn't. I don't know, but you just made me think of that. Pictures of dead people. I don't know. In a chair too. He's just like,
Nod. You don't know if he fell asleep watching TV.
If
Or
they're Irish, they should have showed he played it up. It should have been at a pub with a pint in his hand.
yeah. Actually, it's funny though. I love the research part of all of this. That's half of the fun. Whether it's like architecture, coming, like doing a deep dive into architecture or the history, that is not most of the fun, but it's just as rewarding as actually, executing.
Agreed. I'm working on a story right now that I talked about a couple times called Fade to Blue, and it doesn't start off in New York, but one of the story arcs that we're going through is in New York. And I was thinking to myself, okay, we're going to put this scene in a grocery store, and I thought to myself, well, when did grocery stores start? Was it even
Yeah.
a thing in the 1930s? And then I had to look up, what the lights for the outside street would look like, so I could give it to my artist and all these kinds of things. And it's doing the history part of it, I find is really
That's
interesting.
why I made up my own city, and it's 2024. I don't have to do no research. Science City. Prove to me that it didn't exist there, okay? Yeah, I like Fabrizio and I have talked before. Like you got there's like a gypsy caravan in one of the issues where they go inside, and it's like this almost like Lovecraft version of Manhattan. Like the Madame Blavatsky and seances and all the spiritualism that we kind of forget was big at the time. I make it a joke, but if my comic is successful enough, I do have stories planned, like older cowboys who became detectives. I'll leave it at that. Who are aging detectives in the 20s and 30s. Whose first instinct is to shoot, but they can't because now these aren't territories anymore. So,
Yeah, I mean that time period, it's a turning point. There's no doubt about it. So it feels, it feels like anything can happen. So throwing Horace H. Hoover in there or any sort of superhero, I think is a good call.
This would be funny that if Horace H. Hoover took off his helmet and he was H. Holmes.
I occasionally refer to him as H. Hoover, but the book says Horace H. Hoover very specifically because I know there's not like a movie about H. Holmes, but I feel like if a movie came out tomorrow and it was a big hit, everybody would know who H. Holmes is, and then it would taint like H. Hoover. So I'm like, I use it, but I try not to use it all the time.
So we got a bunch of people watching now. I was purposely like waiting till more people. Tell us about the character himself. Totally unique character.
Sure. So Horace H. Hoover is an occult detective. He set in the 1920s, like we were talking about. And the first series, it's a 5-issue mini series. So this occult detective wears something suspiciously like a vacuum cleaner on his head, and we jump right into it. So there's no backstory or history, but we immediately are put into some mysteries. So he'll investigate like a haunting, or he'll track down like a weird idol. He takes on these cases, and these cases essentially take him. It could be upstairs, it could be to like a pocket universe. So we sort of follow him and his two friends, Max and Slurp, who we get a little bit about, but we don't get their backstories just yet. And he's ultimately looking for the lost universe. And that's sort of hinted, he mentions it, but all of these cases that he's taking are to either get information or learn more, ultimately to find this lost universe. But along the way, we're meeting sort of strange aliens, little girls. We're finding odd books and traveling to strange lands.
And you put a lot of Easter eggs. Like I didn't realize. I saw you. I think you on Yang's channel when you said that you could translate Slurp's language.
Yeah.
And, and I'm like, so I got to reread issue 1 and number 2, knowing that I could do that and figure out how to read.
It's yeah, it's a font. I put so many Easter eggs in there to the point where I actually had to start writing them down because I would do them and I would forget. I'm like, oh, that's right. I took some symbols from, the Keys of Solomon, and then I took some Voynich manuscripts, and I cobble things together and I reference things. So I've got to make sure that I write them down. If not, I will even forget them. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it's a fun comic. I love his speech. He nobody talks like Horace.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that sort of came to me, like his pose, sort of like arched back, hand on hip kind of thing, and then his speech. And from there, everything kind of blossomed from that. But the language is pretty unique, I think. And to me, that is Horace. I think if all of a sudden Horace starts speaking in very sort of colloquial language or real like truncated sentences, something's wrong. So it's very flowery, but I hope a little interesting.
Yeah, I cover your ears for you don't want spoilers. Horace H. Hoover is in my comic, but he's not in my comic, and I love the little bit of dialogue that he has. It tells you everything you need to know about him in like 2 panels. It's so good. It's so good.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
I didn't realize until just now, I didn't think about this. Vacuum cleaners like that weren't even invented in the 30s. So that's why you say suspiciously like a vacuum. Like
Well, technically it's 1928. There's a little bit of we will see the history of the helmet. I will say
okay.
that. So, and that'll tie into some other characters. But that's not going to be, unfortunately, until after the miniseries. The miniseries is really just about him going on these cases that he takes, and then after that, we're gonna get some backstory. We're gonna get a little bit on his powers and sort of the bigger scope later on.
So RJ and you, Fabrizio, like your this is coming out on your site right here. I put the link up here, horsehoover.com store. And RJ, you're doing the same thing for your pulp detective now. You're not really doing a crowdfunding, right? You're just going to put it on your store.
Yes, that's what the plan is right now. Just because I wanted to put a book out where there's a lot of people who tell me, I wish I could afford your book, but I just don't have the money to buy, a $25 graphic novel, even though it's, 80, 90 pages sometimes, and
Right.
then pay for the shipping as well. So I thought I'd put out something and see how it would work with Fade to Blue. We already have 1 issue done, which is 24 pages. And we're working on the second one right now, but and it's just going to be black and white. But I still haven't figured out the format where I'm going to sell it. I think it's more or less going to be like a subscription based thing,
Okay.
probably on my YouTube channel, where you'll get a couple of pages. Every I think it's like I'll put out 8 pages because they're 8-page chapters every week or every 2 weeks, something like that.
Okay. Okay. So I was wondering, is, are you done with crowdfunding? Is it too much? Do you just like this idea of like a soft launch into the book and you can pick them up without?
No, we're working on Thomas Valiant #2 right now. Renzo's about 20 pages in, so we're going to start up that campaign as soon as I'm done with Fade to Blue.
Okay.
I want to do a trailer for it and give it a proper launch, even though it's not going to be crowdfunded. See how that works.
What about you, Fabrizio? What was your thinking on this?
So I'm not done with crowdfunding, but I just wanted to get the book out into people's hands as quick as possible. So as soon as I found a printer, as soon as I got the proofs and the book's printed, I'm like, okay, I wanted to get them out. So I thought I didn't really have time to do the crowdfunder and like do the promo for all that at the same time. I thought that would push, the launch date. So for this book, I did it on my side. I'm a programmer, so it's pretty low effort on my end to do that. I think in the future I will do crowdfunders. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
I was just curious if both of you
Yeah,
guys were just like fed up, discouraged, or trying something new. I got to ask you, who's the printer? Because this is just a phenomenal, like just tactile.
it's
You know,
Mixam,
okay,
Mixam.
I think you're the third person to bring, because I know Comics Wellspring, I know another one, and now Mix them. And then somebody was recommending somebody from China, but I don't want to print my comic. My family's a union family. If I print my comic in China, they're just going to make me refund them.
Um, yeah, I think I'll probably try other printers too, but it just this particular book, these issues, it felt like it was the end product that I was looking for. Maybe in the future for other issues, other complete titles, I might try other printers just to change it up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I was saying a couple of weeks ago that I love the floppies that I did for the Valiant Heroes because I have it as a one issue graphic novel or 3 issues of floppies, and to have the floppies in my hand. I mean, the graphic novel is great and all, but I love having the floppies in my hand.
Yeah. I
yeah.
can't wait to have a copy of my book. Oh, okay. Both of you guys. I assume Fabrizio, I know you got a big family, and RJ, maybe there's more Bigfoot running around someplace in the woods, but do you find it difficult to explain to them like how to buy your comics? Like my family is just like stumbling about. I got to go to this website. I got to type in this, and I look at that as like a I goof on it, but at the same time I'm like, is this a barrier to entry to my comics? Like I'm looking over here because I used to have cards with a QR code so they could scan it, and just a guy at work today was like, I can't figure out how to buy this comic. Like,
For me, I know for me it has been an issue. Um, yeah, I even did a video, because a lot of people had never backed any campaign ever,
right,
outside of sort of the regular comic book fans, but people, family, friends, um, people that just don't really get online and buy computers or back stuff. They had no idea what I was talking about. My
right.
one friend, he said he backed the book. I can't remember which campaign it was. It was a Horace A. Trooper one, and he said he just paid shipping and tax and didn't actually add the book. So it was like he just paid
Oh
shipping
my,
for no book, and I felt
oh
so
my
bad for
god,
him. I'm like, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll get you the book.
oh my god.
I
That,
almost feel like both are ideal. You have the crowdfunding stuff for people that are used to that, but there's also an alternative for people that just want to go to a site immediately and buy it. Maybe that's after the crowdfunder. I don't know.
see, I would like to. My friend Paul is first off. I had a message board for 20 years that went belly up, and we got a zombie of it running right now, but its days are limited, so we're working on importing that. And he's already building a site for me, for Heroic Tales. So we'll have the message board, and then you can buy the comics, stuff like that. So I think a crowdfunding as an event, everybody likes an event. Everybody likes the fireworks. We're having a crowdfunding. Watch the numbers go up, and then forever after we could sell the comics. Yeah, at my leisure. I don't know. I think that is the way to go. And then that brings up the question that I was going to ask. So Vaz is psychic. Have you ever considered doing a print run with Diamond, i.e., the direct market? Both of you guys, what do you think about that?
I really think that you have to build your audience in order to sell to anyone. I mean, that's what I've learned for so long, even before I ever did anything with comics. When I was doing short stories and stuff like that, I always said, build your audience first, build your audience first. And my audience is here. And that's the only people who really are going to gravitate towards my book is the audience that I built so far, unless it catches on like wildfire, which I can't see. So I'm just going to, stick with that because I really don't think I've tried, even just going outside to different crowdfunders like Kickstarter. And because I didn't build an audience there, I got zero, I got nothing. Right. So you gotta go where your audience is. That's what I think.
Well, I'm gonna hopefully launch on Kickstarter in a week or two, so I better not be zero.
I mean, for me at least, I will say it's a hard sell for Horace, and it's one of those deals. I go to a comic book convention and I just see people walk by, and I know, you see Horace H. Hoover. It's not a superhero. It's not immediately like accessible, so it is a hard sell. So yeah, I think for my crowd, they have to sort of get to know the character, or at least underneath the hood a little bit before they can buy into it. So
Yeah, well, I know I'm a bizarre person because I just, you know, when you were on Alterna, I just got everything by Alterna. I didn't want to know Horse Hoover. I wanted to read it cold, and I fell in love with the comic. But I know I'm an outlier, and you know, and Thomas Valiant, when RJ, when you were just talking about, you know, old school superheroics, the good guys are, you know, I was like, this is for me. You know, nobody's doing this stuff. But I think you both are selling yourselves short. Like, I don't know, if I was walking through a comic book store, you know, if there was like 2 or 3 of these on the shelves, every comic book's like, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with ideas because this is going to sound mean, and I don't mean to be mean. You know, I'm grateful that I do have 146 backers for my comics. I mean, who am I? But I would like thousands of people to read my comics. You know, I'm not even talking about the money. So I don't know. Like, I would like to, in a year from now, when I have a couple of comics under my belt, maybe do it another print run directly for Diamond. I don't know. Either one of you guys even considering that?
I mean, in my head, to me, Diamond equals. I know, and this is
I
gonna
know they're the
get.
bad guys. I get that. They destroyed comics. I'm with you on that one.
Right. But all that being said, in my head, it's like Diamond kind of equals success because ultimately I want to get into a comic book shop, and I know
Right.
things have changed and it's chaos, all that kind of stuff. But seeing my comic book on a shelf, you know, at the
Right.
local store, it's. I mean, that's the dream. So
Yeah, I've been going to comic book stores my whole life, and then, like, you know, I remember when I had a guy who came to New York. He was a frequent message poster on my forum, and he came to New York, and he wrote a children's book, and it was in the Strand in Lower Manhattan. So we met in the city. I showed him where the Strand, and he just was like taking his book off the shelf, autographing it, and putting it back. You know what I mean? He was just so happy. I, I could see doing that, going into comic book stores like, hey, this is my book. And people are like, well, get out of my way. It's in front of Spider-Man, you jerk. Yeah, I agree with Marcus said. And I know people, if you criticize crowdfunding at all, you become the bad guy. I'm not criticizing crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding is awesome, and we wouldn't have more than half the books without crowdfunding. But we are into this. You know what I mean? We are the hardcore. You know what I mean? But to just, like I said, when I explained this to guys at work, guy at work yesterday, he was like, oh wow, you got a car. He's opening up his wallet and he's handing me $10. I'm like, no, you got to go to the what? He goes, I'm giving you $10. I'm like, well, the comic is not printed yet. And he's like, well, then what am I buying? Like, he could not accept the idea that I was selling something that didn't exist yet. He was just like, it sounds like a con. And he goes, and then he's just like, come to work with the comic, I'll buy one then.
yeah.
You know. RJ, do you have any of that? Anybody in your family like give you any feedback?
Nah, I really don't. Nobody in my family, except for my 2 brothers, are into comics at all, and I just give them copies. So really,
Yeah. You know what? You should not give them copies, just like they wouldn't let you play D&D with them. You'd be like, no.
I mean,
Man, I could be petty. I get it from my Irish mother, man.
I mean, I will, again, as a programmer, I'm constantly thinking of how to make things easier. If I'm doing a website, you want to minimize the steps from start to finish. And there's no doubt that even as a programmer, the crowdfunding is awkward. It's awkward. It's a little more awkward than just going to a store. Everybody goes to Amazon and they know how to do carts. Everybody goes to, you know, all of these e-commerce. So I do wonder, you know, are these comic book fans, you know, or are they just getting my book because they know me? And is that, yeah, it's important because I want them to have it, but long run, how important is that? I don't know.
I keep hearing that there's a lot of like indie people, they don't even read the comics they get. You know, that would kind of hurt my feelings if they bought my comic and didn't read it. You know, I was like, come on, man, you're supposed to read it. It's a comic book, superheroes. You know, read it. It's fun.
It doesn't take 5 hours. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I'm not writing the brothers, whatever. The brothers,
Karamazov.
yeah, Karamazov. I was going to say Tatarov because the guy just before me was talking about Dexter's Laboratory. You know, I don't know. It's I don't know. I got a lot of big ideas. I don't know how to act on them yet, so I always use my guests as resources, bounce ideas. That's kind of I when Eric July was on my channel and I brought that up, and I don't think he knew what I was talking about or didn't get what I was talking about, or maybe he was being evasive because he was already planning this Rippersend. But and then I talked with Ethan Van Sciver about it. He got a little like, no, we don't do that here. But I don't think people are getting what I'm saying. Like, I wish if I had, won the lottery, or if my comic sells really well, like to set up all the infrastructure for one-stop shopping for us. Like Fabrizio, you could just be like, okay, I need a printer. I need, oh, you got logo guys. We got this. And then we have a fulfillment service. It's not a company. It's not Longbox Comics where you're just paying me for the printing. You're paying the guy who, I have over here to do logo. Not that you would need logos, but you know what I'm saying? One-stop service of Longbox comic book shop. But it's your comic, your company, you own everything. It's just instead of I'm going to go to Mixum and then I'm going to go to this crowdfunding and I'm going to go here, and we'll even crowdfund it and set up a website, and kind of like Fund My Comic, who also printed comics. One stop. I think that's what would be really great. And then it would only take a few extra steps to get it in comic book stores once you get to that point. That's what I was talking about. But
Yeah, I mean there's economy of scale because right now we're all doing like this a sliver of marketing, a sliver like we're
right,
all doing everything. Some way to aggregate all of that stuff together. Any way to do that, I think, is a good idea. Maybe it's just the marketing, maybe it's just the printing, maybe it's just the crowdsourcing. But I think as I always think of myself as a consumer, and to this day, my ideal scenario is going to a comic book shop. In lieu of that, I mean, I still go to a comic book shop, but in lieu of that, I would like to go to one place and buy a bunch of comics.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd like to address Zachtan. He read RJ's Thomas Valiant and he read Fiendish. Well, you got to read Horace H. Hoover too. I freaking love this comic. It's, I joke with Fabrizio every time we talk. I'm like, who's your target audience? And then I interrupt him. I say, me. I'm your target audience. it's everything I want in a comic.
It's funny. I read a John Steinbeck little quote or whatever, and it was very much that don't think of an audience, think of one person as your audience. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, I guess that's John's long box. I mean,
yeah, and he thinks of me in my underwear eating a White Castle. So there you go. That's what he's thinking of when he's writing and drawing Horace H. Hoover.
Yeah, but I'm a firm believer that you gotta write what you like.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, some people do like terrible stuff, so we know that.
But
that
at
is
least
the
they're
case.
being, at least I read the first two. There you go. Issue 3 is
Oh, thanks,
available now,
Marcus.
Marcus. And you don't have to pay like crazy Kickstarter prices. You know what I mean? $8 for a comic, and this, I think it's fair. I think it's a fair ask.
Thank you.
But what I say about I really don't. I'm writing. I'm stumbling now because I'm way too caffeinated. But when I'm writing my heroic tales, I'm writing it because this is what I wanted to read. You know what I mean? And I think I'm not tricking anybody. And I like to think that my enthusiasm is going to go through. Like RJ, you like fantasy. You're writing a fantasy Conan book. You're not writing something that you don't like. Like your energy is going to come through. You know what I mean? Like if me writing a romance comic book, I don't think it would be any good because my heart's not in it. Did we lose RJ?
No, I'm still here. I'm just thinking of the fact that, I've been going back and reading a lot of old comic book stuff that's, public domain and things online and stuff like that. And there's plenty of comics that I can even remember. Certainly, older collection from my brothers and stuff like that. But there's a lot of bad comics published by a lot of big publishers. I mean,
now or
no, just all throughout all time. I mean,
Surgeon's Law, 90% of everything is shit,
But I'm just looking at what we're doing. I'm thinking to myself, well, perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps my stuff is not very good. Perhaps it's comparable with the garbage stuff that I'm finding online and things like that from, stuff that people have forgotten. But I honestly think that there's so much of I don't know, it's just even a glut of talent, because we have so many people that can write and draw and do all these spectacular things, that we're just wiping away all of that junk that came before. I mean, there were so many bad DC comics in the 70s and the 60s and stuff like that. So the stories were just awful. And then you get into the independents and they were just horrible. I mean, you're picking gems out of what you want for your collection if you're going back in time.
Oh
But
yeah, I agree with you.
I think that today we got so many good writers, and just we don't have the platform to get it out there into the world. That's the problem.
I think we're looking at the 80s black and white glut with a lot of rosy glasses. There were a lot of bad comics that came out, but we forget those and we remember the good ones like Love and Rockets and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and, Poison Elves we don't talk about, or, there was a lot of like bondage fairies and stuff like that, but
I think you're right. I think the skill level right now is really high, and it's just getting it out there. That's the frustrating part. Just reaching that audience, like convincing them that the quality is really high. Some
yeah,
random person at a convention that has just been reading Batman and Spider-Man, and that's it, or whatever, for the past 20 years, and will not venture outside of that.
yeah.
Convincing them is the kicker.
I had a partner at work who was, first off, he was afraid of getting teased for being in his 50s and still reading comics. And then finally, when we opened up, he was just like, Marvel, DC, that's it. Not even Image, not even anything like that. So when I was telling him I was making a comic, that blew his mind, that people like, I mean, you going on so like I had to literally show him, like we were on a video call and I'm on the screen showing him how to go to fund my comic and buy my, and now I think I opened up a rabbit hole. He's like looking at other stuff, but this is a hardcore lifelong comic book guy. Had no clue that any of this exists. He doesn't go on YouTube, Mark, if you're watching now, hello, you know what I mean? But he was like, wow, you go on YouTube and talk to people about comics. He was just a solitary guy who liked his Batman, liked his Spider-Man, liked his Fantastic Four. So
I mean, to be honest,
a lot of people like that.
I think about whenever I ventured outside the mainstream stuff, it would just be me walking around a comic book shop and then seeing the Goon or whatever it is, and the art's interesting. You pick it up, and that was enough, honestly, for me. I didn't need a big story. I didn't even need to know who Kevin Powell was. I just grabbed it.
I love the Goon. I love the Goon. That's such a good comic.
But it's just hard for some people, unfortunately.
Yeah, the Goon should be like it's like a required reading as far as I'm concerned, comic. And I could see the Goon hanging out with Horace.
Yeah, I mean the art. Oh my God, the art in the Goon is some of my all-time favorite.
Did you get that the Ed Gein book that he did?
No.
Eric Powell took like a year off of the Goon, and other people were drawing that witches who did the brewery story, notably. And I forget who the writer was. I did a video on it. It's called "Did You See What That Ed Gein Gone Done?" And it's a biography of Ed Gein.
Oh.
And it does the unthinkable. It actually makes you feel a little sorry for Ed Gein when you see this guy's childhood and life. You're like, I understand why this guy was a crazy murderer. Not that I'm condoning it, but it's not just you wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to kill people, make cups out of their skulls.
Oh.
That he was a little kid at one point. Yeah. Ooh. Excellent book. The owner of Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, the big store in Charlotte who runs here. Guy who owns a comic book store has no idea that there's crowdfunding comics. Yeah. RJ, have you done conventions? Are you interested in conventions?
I was thinking about it last year, especially when they were talking about people like Michael Bancroft and things like that going down to Miami. But yeah, I'm so much of a shut-in. I just can't do it. I mean, I can't even. I don't know. It would be too much for me. I'm so much introvert.
The ankle bracelet will beep. I get it. You can't do it. No, because I never thought about conventions until Paul Thayer, who does the Project Noesis.
Right.
That guy could sell ice to an Eskimo. He didn't even know about crowdfunding in YouTube. He just liked comics, started making his own comic, and went to conventions. And just through sheer force of personality, he said he was like making like $4,000 in comic sales at a convention. Just him and his wife, like, they had a routine, they had it every. And then somebody told him about YouTube, and he was like, "What?" And now he's doing all the YouTube things, and so he's like, "What are you going to do conventions?" I'm like, "Well, I got nothing to sell yet. Let me get some comics, put it in my hand, and then maybe I'll go to a convention." But I never thought about it, but now I'm like, I think that would be kind of fun.
I mean, I haven't done a bunch, but I have fun at them. And honestly, I don't do hard sells. That's not me. But sometimes you literally somebody walking by and all you say is, "Hey, how's it going?" And they will stop and then eventually buy. So it's even one of those it's places where you don't need to be really extroverted and getting in people's faces. You
Well,
can
they're
kind of,
already interested, so half the work is done.
yeah. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. They can get grueling. I'm excited for Plastic City, but I don't know. Sometimes it's nice being on the other side of the table. I've been on I've been going to them for so long. It's just nice to sit down and meet some other people. Meeting other creators there is a lot of fun too. So I recommend it. You should do it.
Oh wow, Horace H. Hoover, could you draw me Spider-Man?
Nobody does that. I did have a few people recognize Horace H. Hoover though. Like, oh, I've seen this comic book all over. I'm like, where all over could
Where
you possibly
all
be?
over? Define all over.
The bathroom? Are they writing about something about me?
It's funny because Graham Nolan did the whiskey cigar party over in New Jersey, and he was there. I thought Billy Tucci was going to go, but Cecil was there, and I didn't realize Paul Thayer was there, Project Analysis, and a whole bunch of people with Pat Broderick was there. How cool is that? So I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go. This would just be like a bad opportunity to miss. It's so I put the call out on Twitter, and it turns out Jesse Blaze Snyder lives like 10 minutes away from me. He has his own comic. It's on Kickstarter right now, Effing for the Future, and he's D. Snyder's son. So me and D. Snyder's son are driving to New Jersey, just talking rock and roll and comic books, having a blast. We go to the thing, and I'm just, I could talk to you guys on the screen and stuff, and then now all of a sudden in person I got real shy, and so did Jesse, and he's grew up in show business, everything like that. We both like look at it. I think we made a mistake. We made and we kind of just opened up, and then people like, "Hey, aren't you John from John's Long Box?" And I'm like, I'd never been recognized before. But then again, I'm at a venue and one guy says, like, "I thought you'd be taller." I'm like, "No, not taller, just fatter." And the next thing you know, we're all talking, and Graham Nolan
longer.
What's that?
I thought you'd be longer.
Yeah, I thought your box would be longer. Just my belly. It was so great. Next thing you know, I'm hanging out with Pat Broderick. He did the variant cover, and they're all saying the same thing. You got to go to conventions. You got to meet people and talk. And let me get my comic book out. But like you said, I see Horace H. Hoover all over the place, and then here I am at a party in New Jersey in the middle of the woods. People are like, "Yeah, I watch your channel, man. Let's get some pictures taken." And I was like, "Wow, I'm famous." And then we're at the gas station 2 hours later getting gas, and people are yelling at us. We just like, we're not famous. But that'll be fun.
Yeah, if you do a convention, I'll try to make it. The whole point is for me and my wife to pick a place that we don't normally get to go and do a convention.
Yeah, make a couple of weekends out. I want to go to Heroes Con because my childhood friends, some of them live in Florida. Like we all they converged there, and they've been inviting me, but I just haven't been able to make it. It's just like prime construction weather. Like this is the perfect weather to build things in New York. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's kind of hard to take off. And I got a sweet position. If I take off, they're just gonna put somebody else on my position. And then when I come back, I'm jumping in the mud hole, because that's just the way it is. So I couldn't take off. But maybe next year I'll actually have comics. Yeah, Marcus keeps trying to get me to go. So RJ, no, you wouldn't come to Heroes Con with us? You could put like a big plastic shield in front of your face.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you, John, since I own a business, right? And I'm not the one who does the actual work anymore, but I'm the one who okays all the work. I say
Oh, so you're an
everything.
exploiter and a colonizer.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Because I got people that do the work for me, but I gotta okay it because I'm the quality control. So I gotta I really can't stop doing that.
Yeah.
it, it's not really. I don't even know the last time I took a vacation. Honestly, not that my life is anything but a vacation, but still, I don't go places for a vacation. I go to the
You know,
beach. It's 2 minutes down the road for me.
when I was a part owner of a pizzeria, I had 3 years no vacation, working like on average 12 to 13 hours a day. People are quick. This is a little tirade that's appropriate of nothing, but like people are so quick to attack the exploitive business owner when it's like, dude, where were you when I didn't work? You had a vacation while I worked for 3 years straight. I was 21 to 24 working in a pizzeria thinking we're going to sell this business and I'll have some money and whatever. Of course, it went out of business, but they were all going to parties and drinking and meeting chicks, and I'm scrubbing the pizza ovens and stuff like that. And
I'm right there with you, John. I was working on the farm and I said to the people around me, why in the world do we who do labor not get Labor Day off and everybody else gets Labor Day off? Really?
yeah, so there's my little time. The business owners, you want to share the profits. Well, how about you share some of the work and risk of failure too?
Yeah,
But there you go.
I had my own business for like 12 years
Oh,
after
really?
working in advertising and killing myself working 100-hour weeks. But I had my own business, and man, it is the life. I mean, you get to a certain point, but when you have people working for you, yeah, but it's all risk, you know. But I'm not gonna lie, I didn't work a Friday in 10 years. I mean, I didn't work that many Mondays either.
I had Juneteenth, the day the Republicans freed the slaves from the Democrats. I'd never tired of telling people that. Yeah, entrepreneur appreciation day. Yeah, yeah. Where would America be without entrepreneurs? I have a lot of respect for them. I, the story I always tell is when I moved to Albuquerque, I was walking around the street and getting familiar with and there was a guy opening up a sandwich place. Like a Subway, but only one. And I walk in there and he's literally sweeping up and putting the chairs down for the first time. He's like, "You're my first customer. What do you want?" I'm like, "Oh, what do you got?" And I looked it over. I was like, "You know what? I'm from New York. You got a meatball parm?" He's like, "Do I got a meatball parm?" So I was like, "All right, first customer. I'm getting." Can I put pickles and lettuce on my meatball parm? That's. I was like, okay, all right. I never went back. I take it back. So as he's making the sandwich, he's just like, "I'm tired of working for other people. I'm my own boss now. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. I'm the boss now. I'm going to be telling people what to do. And if I want to take off, I'm taking off." I'm like, "Okay." And he puts the pickles and lettuce on a meatball parm, and I wrap it up, take it home. I'll eat it home. And then 7 years later, like a week before I'm leaving, I'm walking down the street, and what do I see? This guy taking everything down, closing up the store, and I walk in, and he's just like, "Yeah, working for myself. I got a job. Somebody else is going to pay me. It doesn't matter how bad the business do." He's just, every week I'm getting a paycheck. Like, he totally changed it. And I felt like saying, that's because pickles don't go on a meatball parm. You're going to open up a sandwich shop. That's the first thing you learn, how to make the sandwiches.
I mean, ultimately, your customers are your bosses as well, and you can't really forget that. You know, every book I sell, it's thrilling and exciting. I'm eternally grateful if one person buys a comic book.
Oh yeah, I want you to do good. I think it's for selfish reasons. I want to see more, you know. So I really dig it. And it's right up my alley. I don't know if it bothers you, but I always compare it to Hellboy, in
Yeah.
the fact that it's an occult investigation.
Yeah.
But he's not an agency. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
RJ, you got to read this book because I think you would like it. I think it's right up your alley. The issue 2 when he goes into the library, I could look at that page, the hidden freaky library, and all I could think of is there's no way in the world you could have had an artist. How would you have described that page to anybody?
Yeah, it is interesting because you're making a million little decisions along the way as you're drawing it too. So, and then you're coloring it, and then you can shift the whole layout, well, to some degree with just color. So every layer you're changing the composition and the layout. So thank you. I mean that double page spread took me a very long time. I have to
Yeah.
admit though, in the back of my head, so far I think that's the only double page spread I've done. It is. I'm thinking, is it that I don't want to do the 90s, right, where everything's a double page spread. Is it too indulgent to do a double page spread? Because after the, what
Only if you do it the wrong way. Only if you do it sideways. If you're doing it
Oh my
regular,
God,
if you
RJ, that just hurt hearing you say it. I hate, hate when I have to turn the comic this
yep,
way. I'm in the
exactly.
way.
If you're doing it this way, yeah, no problem. But if you got to turn the comic sideways, no.
yeah.
I just love this. This was just amazing. This is Horace
Thank
H.
you.
Hoover goes to a building, goes to a library, and he asks for a key to the special. And the lady's like, "Here you go." And the other librarian's like, "What are you talking about? That's the closet." She's like, "He's a nice gentleman. Leave him alone." I love that. So I like, and again, there's a mystery. Is the key magical? Is Horace magical? Is there even a library? Is he just a lunatic? Is he just, is he sitting there in a little washcloth closet? I love all this stuff. And
Thank you.
I'm dying to ask you, but I don't want to know.
Yeah, I just don't want to give a lot away. I just want to, like, these are the types of stories, these are the characters, these are the worlds, but how exactly, what's in the how the sausage is made. Eventually we'll get there, but giving it too early, it just sucks all the
Yeah,
fun
I'm
out of it
terrible.
for
I
me.
give away all the secrets. Turning the comic sideways a thing. Oh my God, RJ,
In the 90s, it was.
Yeah.
I,
It's the worst.
I hate that to the point. Like I could like a comic book, and I'm not even reading these pages. And then that could like make or break a comic. If you turn to the comics, like sometimes Alan Moore will do it because like the person's tripping or they got vertigo, and it kind of makes sense because it's supposed to be disoriented. But I just hate that because like Rob Liefeld wanted to sell a full
Yeah.
2-page full artwork of young blood or whatever. You know what I mean? I hate that. RJ, you got to remember the Fantastic Four when that issue in the Negative Zone when it was sideways. I think it was 242, might even be the number. Yep, Marcus just backed me up.
I don't remember that one off the top of my head. I do remember a lot of X-Force having to be turned sideways, though.
Yeah, John Byrne did a story. They were in the Negative Zone, and it was like they landed on this planet, and they were sacrificing women to like this laser beam. And Reed Richards is trying to explain to him it's just a proximity center. Like when you get close enough, it fires a laser beam. It's not a goddess that's taking a sacrifice. And they're like, blasphemy. So the thing, of course, throws a rock at it and it blows off, and they all realize, But it's a great comic, well drawn, but it's sideways, and I hate it because of that.
Yeah, that's obnoxious. So I always have in the back of my head, anytime I'm making any decision, is like, did they do that in the 90s? I'm going to do the opposite, just in case.
I'm just opening up to a random page. I hope there's nothing spoiler on it, but you have a really, again, this isn't like a simple color palette, and I love it. I wanted to emulate this with my comic, and I think I didn't describe well enough what I wanted with my colorist, and we had to start all over again. So, but I was just like, just color it the way you want. Now Daniel's knocking it out of the park, but I should have mailed him some Horace H. Hoover comics and said, this is what I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I just went with whatever. I can't remember the exact year of the palette that I'm using. But honestly, I did it because I spent so much time just trying a million different shades of things. And I said, you know what? I'm writing, drawing, inking, coloring, and lettering. I've got to add some constraints that help visually as well. And the constraints are, these are your colors. If it's not in these 72 colors, you don't get it. So that constraint sometimes is very difficult, but a lot of times it gets me into like a process of being able to get through pages quicker.
Well, one of the things I like, again, I'm just opening up random pages, just trying to see if this is issue. Okay, this is issue 1. I didn't want to open up anything issue 3 and ruin it for me. But like I know you're doing this with the computer. You're not brushing with pen and inks and paper. But it's reminiscent of the comics that I grew up and loved, like this panel right here. You just have a background, color, forefront. You know what's important is colored.
Yeah.
A little bit of color in the background. You know, I just love that. It's almost like too many colors. You remember Amadeus when Salieri's like too many notes, you know, and then he's like, yeah, which ones do you want me to? Sometimes I think the comics have just got too many colors, and it doesn't really help.
Nope, doesn't help at
Yeah.
all. Everything's mud. I've done like
Totally
5
agree.
different videos on it. It's you can't. The whole point of sequential art is you fill in the action with the panel movement from one panel to another, and if you can't tell what's going on in one panel to another because there's just so much visual confusion, then it doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Visual confusion. That's the perfect
Yeah.
way to describe it. And you know, I know I'll catch hell for saying this, but like Ethan Van Sciver's Cyberfrog, he does such super details. I really do think he's one of the best living comic book artists. But then the Kyle Ritter colors, it's almost like you can't. Everything is super detailed to the point where sometimes I'm like, my eyes can't differentiate. And like Horace H. Hoover, this jumps out. Like this is 3D. This panel, I'm glad I opened up to this page. But this panel where they're walking down the street, that's 3D. Everything that's important, I could differentiate. Like there's no mistaking what's going on. But sometimes in a lot of these modern comic, like there's just so much, like it becomes flat, if that makes sense. It's almost like a stained glass window. You know how you look at a stained glass window? There's no dimension to it. It's everybody's on the same plane. And I don't know. So I like your colors. You said you're purposely constraining yourself. And I think, and people, I don't know if I'm not explaining myself well, but I do think when we give ourselves constraints and then be artistic within those constraints, I think we get better art from that.
Yep, definitely.
Yep. Totally agree.
A few times, like a couple of people got hot and bothered when I said it's a fact that most of the best comics we've ever read came out under the Comics Code Authority. Yes, I know it's censorship, but it's also a fact that some of the best comics came out. You know, and I think, you know, another example I give is the first Star Wars movie. George Lucas wanted to do all of these imaginative, crazy things, but he was limited by budget. He was limited by, you know, reality and the studio and we all love Star Wars. You know, can you imagine how bad Star Wars would be? Like, we look at the sequels. Can you imagine how bad Star Wars would be if George Lucas did everything he wanted? C-3PO would be like a 600-foot robot, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, it forces editing. I mean, and we all need to edit as much as humanly possible until we feel like, okay, the clarity is being sacrificed and not just, you know, self-indulgent. It'd be like saying, I'm going to do a comic book. It's going to be anywhere from 5 pages to 500,000 pages. You know, like what would you come up with?
Yeah.
It would be
terrible. So I'm going to fill it with filler because I gave myself,
yeah.
You know, I told myself I wanted to do a 22-page script because that's what comic books are. You know, I wanted to make it as close to a real comic, or like my comic book's not real, but you know what I'm talking about. I wanted to make it as close to a Bronze Age Marvel comic as humanly possible. I found telling myself that it was going to be a 22-page script, I found that to be like, well, now I'm just adding filler for the sake of filler. You know what I mean? So I ended up streamlining a few things. You know, art. You know, sometimes a limitation is good.
That's one of the things I love about comics and I think I talked about this a couple of times, but I love the fact that when I was writing things like short stories and even the novel manuscript that I did, it was like I had to finish the entire thing and then get an editor to tell me, okay, you got to take this out here and this out there, and you got to cut that down. But when I'm writing a comic, it's like, okay, I know exactly what the page structure looks like. I know exactly how many pages this is going to be. I know how to break it down into chapters. I know exactly how many panels I can put onto a page. All these limitations get me writing much faster. And I was like, even I primed the pump by just putting page 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4. Just that little thing in my computer, hit and return, and then go back and then fill in the blanks. It's so easy compared to other forms of telling stories, if you ask me, especially when you're a writer. I love it.
Well, you just brought up a good question. How do you decide how many panels you're going to put on a page?
It depends on, well, the thing is, what I usually do is I break it up into 8-page chunks, which is usually like 8-page, like my Fade to Blue, they're 8-page chapters, right? Every 8 pages is a new chapter. And that's why there's 24 pages usually in a book. And I put out the outline of what's going to be on each page. And then I go, how do I get from point A on page 1 to point A on page 3? And then, how many points of movement do I need to get to those, to connect those 2 pages together with page 2? That's all I need, right? And well, you gotta think smart. And it's like, first page is usually a splash page or a visual setup, things like that. All these things that you need in order to inform the reader of what's going on. That's the purity of it. And I think that's why it's so audience driven, is because, it's not me telling a story and you got to follow along. It's the audience is the one that's setting the pace, because you got to put in things like not just panel breaks, but setup of visuals so that they know what's going to happen for the next 3, 4, 8 pages.
Fabrizio, same question. How do you decide?
I mean,
I'm sure if I asked 100 people, I'm going to get
Yeah.
100 different answers.
I mean, I definitely know that I have a certain scene that's similar to that. So like this scene is going to be 4 pages or whatever, and I know these things have to happen in these pages. I personally, like, I'm okay with high panel pages sometimes, because I think there's sort of a density of storytelling you can do. Um, but I don't do it sort of willy nilly. If the story needs it, if I want to condense a lot of story into a couple pages, then I'll just do more panels. I'm just working on a page right now where it was a 3 panel page, and I really wanted a big sort of splash at this one scene. It's a pretty intense scene. And I went back and forth and went back and forth on it. I eventually got rid of that, and it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a 10 panel page now.
Wow.
Because there's this one scene where you see this hand sort of slowly come out and grab something. Spoilers. And
A White Castle box. I mean,
yes. And it turns out that is the right call, like in my head. I mean, you know what? That's the right effect I'm trying to convey. Ultimately, it's the same story, really, like at a high level, the same thing happened, but it just came down to that scene and the motion. So I don't know if that answered that at all, but
no. I didn't expect you to be like 4. There's always, you know what I mean? Like, well, first off, let me say hello, Michael Crack, a new name. I love seeing new names. Thank you for showing up. I took Renzo. I took Renzo. I'm calling RJ Renzo. I took RJ's advice back before we even communicate. Like, I got the Will Eisner sequential art. I've always loved that Beyond Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. So I got what I consider the textbooks. I got the Making Comics the Marvel Way. So I read all the books, but I more than anything, I read comics for 40 years. So my answer is it feels right to, when I start writing, it's not like, okay, there's going to be 6 panels. So I just start writing. This has to be this. Like, I remember in the Will Eisner, he said, hey, Fabrizio, how you doing? And then Fabrizio responds, I'm doing great, John. How you do? The next word balloon is another panel. Like a panel should be a statement, a reaction to it, and maybe sometimes a third. That's the Will Eisner one. And of course, that could be broken too. So, but like, hey, Fabrizio, what are you doing? I don't know. What is that? Now, to me, that would be the last panel, because the next page would be the reveal of, a witch flying through a window or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I try to incorporate like something that is new information would be the start of the. So maybe, I don't know, 9. I think the most I ever had was like 7 panels. And I think RJ again, Renzo. Now I'm getting you and Renzo mixed up. I think I did like 4 panels on a page, and when I saw the finished art, there was like 9 panels, but there was like little insert panels because he did a close up of the face, and I'm like, I never thought of that in a million years, but it was the right call, because he's the artist, he's the visual person, So I don't know. I just think when there's a like a change or a surprise, that's a natural break. But which is why I wouldn't have two people sitting in a restaurant talking, because what is the change? The waitress shows up.
Yeah, but I think you're right. It's just the volume of things consumed eventually just becomes second nature whenever you're looking at things, and that counts whenever you're producing things. There's times where I read comic books or have read comic books where I think this person has never really read a comic book before, ever. And also the kinds of comic books too. Again, I'm older. Bronze Age is my age, so you're
Yeah,
gonna see more of that kind of stuff in what I do. But there's a lot of people that are really into 90s nostalgia right now, so they're really going to be harkening back to the Image stuff. So what
it's
you
funny.
consume.
I have an idea for a comic set in 1999, and I got to ask Renzo, can you draw in like a 90s
Oh,
style? I think that would just be
that would be
funny.
fun.
Yeah. I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But there was a guy who's on my channel. I got his comic, and I afterwards he was like, "What did you think of my comic?" And I said, "I really liked it." I said, "How are you asking me for a criticism?" "Oh yeah, be honest." So I said, I really thought you messed up right here, because this called for an action sequence, but you literally had people sitting in a restaurant drinking coffee, which is like what we make fun of, when they and that was the last time we spoke. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry you didn't like my comic." I'm like, "I didn't say I didn't like your comic. You asked me for a criticism," but like, he's younger. He's a lot younger, and I'm like, if you were a 45-year-old person, the last thing you would have done was have two people who are clearly setting up to be the end. This was a perfect chance for them to like spar or like pace each other like tigers or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But like, you just made me think of it. Like, I really disbelieve that this person has been reading comics for 20 years. Not that there's anything wrong with getting into comics 5 years ago and falling in love with them, but like, that's like getting promoted to the major leagues. Or you ever see like a punk rock band that all of a sudden's on Electro Records and their second album sucks?
Yeah.
You weren't ready for Atlantic. You
Yeah.
weren't ready for Electra. You needed a couple more years doing alternative tentacles before you like Urge Overkill. Guys, you got signed too quick and it ruined the band. RJ's like, I have no idea what they're talking about now.
Quite honestly, yes.
RJ, there's this thing called electric music. These guitars, you can plug them in. It's not a jug that you go.
Need some 80 cent. That's what you need.
Yeah. But you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes, you need to like hash it out a little bit later. Play in the farm league before the major leagues call you up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to take off because my stream starts in 3 minutes. But before I do that, I'm going to throw a log in the fire for you to talk about if you have.
He's dropping a bomb and leaving.
When you were saying I want Renzo to draw a 90s style comic, what popped into my head? It was the Ambush Bug DC comic where they were making fun of the Image guys. That's exactly what popped into my head.
Oh, yeah. Or if you remember, Marvel did Doom Force, and it was like a goof on. Yeah. Or DC did Doom Force. It was the Doom Patrol in the style of X Force.
I can just remember the panels from that comic where it's like Ambush Bug going, "Look, I can bend my leg over top of my head," basically trying to do the Spider-Man, Todd McFarlane stuff, all that kind of things. Anyways, I got to run. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Yeah. I'll watch it when I go to bed. I always pop in and comment on RJ streams. So there you go. Crom the Destroyer still available. Nick Axe, he's showing me some of this beautiful artwork. What a tremendous art that Nick is handing in.
Great. Well, I gotta run. I'll see you all later.
Thank you.
Bye.
RJ just made me think of RJ. I thought I called him Renzo again, but because my comic's called Heroic Tales, I want to go back and forth in time. Like the Patriarch will be the through line, but I have stories, like I said, set in the 40s. I'm going to have stories set in the Old West, and I want to have a couple of set in the 80s and 90s, and I would love to see if Renzo could adapt his style to look like the 90s, you know,
I
because
love that.
there's like a couple of iterations of the super team that like I would like to do, like, okay, you know, remember back then, and you know, as they're fighting this, they cut to an 80s version of the same super team with like mullets and patches all over their comic costume.
I would love. I love that sort of conceit in stories. Whether it's either jumping back or a story within a story, it's one of my favorite. Like as soon as I know they're gonna go back in time, and I don't mean dream sequences. I mean I'm legit flashbacks or something like that, or like part of like you're learning the story in the past that affects the future. It's one of my favorite like story
Yeah, there's gonna be
things.
there's gonna be something that ties a lot of the stories together, and I, I I hope I'm clever enough that people like, oh, you planned that from the first issue. Like literally, there's something that ties almost everybody. I can't say, and it's going to start in the 40s, you know, and this thing ties not just well the superheroes together, and I'm dancing around because I don't want to spoil.
Yeah, I know. I do the same. I do the same thing.
Oh, Marcus, you brought up ForceWorks. For those of you who don't know, ForceWorks was Marvel Comics copying Image Comics, but all the talent went to Image Comics. So it was a bad imitation of bad Image Comics. It was awful. Talk about, yeah, it was Iron Man started his own team, and they were in the Foundry, and it was the Scarlet Witch, and then there was like this weird Marvel character called Sentry that I've never seen. He was like this vampire thing with battle axes. It was such a bad comic. And what I was talking about, all the color, it was colored in such a way that it did look like stained glass. Everything was flat. It was just a bad comic. And of course, I got every issue because I was a total completionist at the time. Just an awful comic.
I mean, I always feel bad because I talk bad about the 90s, and I know there's a lot of people that you know grew up in the 90s, so they're going to have that attachment too. So I feel bad whenever I bring that, but I mean it's definitely a differentiation between my book and your book and a lot of other books. So
I had a guy on my channel like last week, and we were talking the obligatory question, like, "Hey, what was your first comic?" And it was the New 52 with DC, and I was just like,
wow,
man, I'm going back talking like 1972, you know, Bill Kane going Captain Marvel, and this like your first comic was when I quit comics. What can we possibly talk about?
Yeah, that's kind of, I don't know. It would be like if somebody never read the classics or Steinbeck or Dostoevsky, and they only knew, I don't know, Stephen King or somebody like that. They just have a different view of comics. 100%. It's just almost a different medium at that point.
It was funny because the old timers and the new timers definitely got divided up. The reveal of the new Superman costume, and you know, everybody loves the colors. It looks like, but then they got that Jim Lee lines, and I said just too many lines, and people are like, what are you talking about? That's the way it looks. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's got to be like 26 years old. You know, but the 40 and older crowd are just like, no, Superman doesn't have lines. But I'm like, yeah. You know, we forget that some people's Green Lantern is Alan Scott. Some people's Green Lantern is Hal Jordan. Yeah. Some people's Green Lantern is Kyle Rayner. And when I first heard that somebody was like, yeah, Kyle Rayner is my Green Lantern, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that's somebody's Green Lantern.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I do wonder if they go back and read the quote unquote classics though. Because, you know, I didn't grow up in I was born in 1975, but I didn't watch The Godfather until I was in college. So it's like, you know that there are certain sort of like milestones in some media. So you figure out what those bands were. Led Zeppelin. You go watch The Godfather. You read Ditko stuff. Like, I am curious if there is that interest in the old stuff because it sort of reached a high watermark, or they're like, you know what, that happened a long time ago. Who really cares?
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with Vaughn Coleman. He's got a comic called Phenomenova. Yeah. And he's 26 years old, even though he looks 12, but he is really, really doing his due diligence and like, John, what should I read? What do you think is important? And not that I'm the authority, but he's like, I'm making comic books. It's my duty to know this old stuff. So he's reading the old Marvels. He's reading the old, I admire that. This is a guy who wants to know the medium. And there's also other guys that just like they're not interested and they like what they like, and they're making good comics too. There's no one way to do it, but
Yeah. Again, I guess it's approach. Some people can play guitar in a famous band and never learn the notes or the chords, and they're amazing. And some people need to know the scales and all the notes,
yeah,
and they need to know the theory behind it to do. I definitely am the latter, unfortunately. I need a whole bunch of information before I feel like I have the confidence to execute.
yeah,
But
yeah. I the example I'm thinking of is what's the name? Izzy Azalea, that pop singer.
yeah.
She kind of came and went, but she named herself Izzy because her boyfriend had an iguana named Izzy. And then they interviewed the boyfriend. The boyfriend goes, "Yeah, I named my iguana Izzy after Iggy Pop." Oh, oh, Iggy Azalea.
It's Iggy Azalea,
Yeah, Iggy Azalea. I just messed up the whole story. So they asked her, "Are you a fan of Iggy Pop?" And she's like, I don't know who that is." And I made fun of her, and and a lot of people are like, she's 2015 girl pop star. Like that. If I started a band in the 80s, should I know who Glenn Miller was? Are you going to make fun of me because I don't know who Louis Prima was? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't know. So there's some truth to that. She doesn't have to know Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
Ace
Frehley doesn't know music theory.
I don't know if you're a fan of if your profession is comics, I think it is your duty to know comics, know the history, know the art medium, know everything about it. If you're a musician, you should know, Bootsy Collins, who Bootsy Collins is. You should know all of that stuff. I admit I'm not familiar with the Green Lantern comics, but I like John Stewart. Yeah, John Stewart. There's something about John Stewart I always liked because like he was the architect of Green Lantern, and depending upon who the writer is, they had him construct his constructs like an engineer would. Like he was building it with supports and stuff. I always thought that was cool, rather than just a bubble and a boxing glove like Hal Jordan. I had an iguana named Iggy. Well, that's how Iggy Pop got his name from. His real name is John Ostringer, and he named himself after an iguana. Just he had a pet iguana, and people called him Iggy. So it comes full circle to Iggy Azalea.
Okay.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah, the circle is now complete.
Yeah.
Which brings us to I got to go to bed. So and let's bring up your site again. I know I took us off rails, but that's what I do. So you have Horace H. Hoover 1, 2, and 3 available on your site.
Yeah, and go to the website, check it out. I think I will be doing like once a month, maybe like a little sale and adding something to the store. So maybe I'll add commissions or t-shirts. So once a month, I'll have a discount code or something. Check it out. There'll be new stuff there. I'll send out, if you're subscribed to my Substack, I'll send a newsletter there. If not, I'll post it on Twitter. So
cool.
They go out in a couple of days. So if you order today, it'll go out in a couple of days and you'll have it shortly.
Yeah. I ordered last week and I got it like within 3 or 4 days, but I'm in New York, you're in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this comic. Like I said, for selfish reasons, I want it to sell. I want it to keep going. I really enjoy the comic. I enjoy talking with Fabrizio. You've been one of the longtime guys who've been coming on my channel a lot. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And the printing, the closer I get to the actual printing stage, I'm just really paying attention. This printing is excellent. I like that it's flat, because some of the comics you get and they're all bowed like this. I can't, this is nice and flat. It's like a sturdy cover. It's just so good, and it just looks so great with these. Again, your words, limited palette.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with the printing. So I took my time to find a printer that I liked, the paper, everything that portrayed my colors as close to what I was trying to get. So
how difficult was that to talk to the printer? Is that a pain in the neck?
uh
I don't know what I'm in for.
no, I mean, it was just a matter of like, it was multiple printers that I had to, you upload files, you get a proof back, you look at it, and you're like, no, that's going in the dump pile. You try another one.
like a physical comic you get sent.
Yeah. So it was a lot of trial and error of that. Like, I
Oh
want a little
wow.
thicker paper, I want a little thinner paper,
Oh wow.
and
So you actually got a bunch of proofs,
yes,
physical proofs that you didn't like.
yeah.
Anything egregious that was just like, oh my god. Or is it
No,
just like I ordered stuff and I didn't realize what I was ordering?
I'm pretty picky. So I think a lot of people would have been okay with most of the stuff that I got, but I had something in my head, and well, you know
Yeah,
what it's
that's what you
like. You
want.
just, if I'm gonna do it, if I'm gonna publish this as well,
Oh,
it's really gotta
here's a
to
good
be.
question. Any differences between the alternate comics and your comics?
Yes, I'll go over real quick. Outside the actual paper and printing, there is an extra ad, a fake ad in issue
Yeah, I opened up to that and I got confused. I was like, what?
two, which got cut originally, which I'm a really big fan of. It's a fun little meta thing. And there's also the letters page, and very specifically with the letters page, I treated them as like mini epistolaries. So each letter on the page will be part one, two, three, four, and five all through the miniseries. So when you're reading issue one and you read a letter from X person, when you read issue two, that person will be writing a letter in issue two and writing a letter in issue three. So you will see these little stories sort of evolve that sort of help create the world of Horus and might
Oh,
answer some things. So
you see, every time I talk to Fabrizio, we always joke around who's more pretentious. He throws out words like epistle. I can't even pronounce that word.
epistolary. It's
Epistolary.
a story in letters like Dracula and Frankenstein and stuff like that. So
I keep joking that one day we're just gonna have a stream of just us over pretentious, out pretentiousing each other. Who would win? Just sit here like with an NPR voice. Yes, yeah. And, I was in a bar once in Budapest, and Joey Ramone and came in.
that would be fun. But yeah, that's a big change. So hopefully, if you get the bundle, you'll at least read the letters again, so you get an idea of what's going on. But
Yeah, I'm big fan. Can't wait. I already know the answer, but for people watching, this is a 5-issue series. Is that the end of Horus?
no, I will be continuing Horus definitely, but there might be other titles interspersed between the Horus stuff. But definitely at least 12 issues or 2 arcs left for Horus. So
I don't know who would that who I could be pretty. I went through my hardcore the 90s. I if I had a time machine and visited
yeah,
myself in the 90s, I would just knock myself flat on my ass. I was
I
just
know.
such a pretentious jerk.
I try not to be, and I know I try not to be.
What are you reading
I'm
those comics? You should be reading Vertigo.
yeah.
Now I'm the complete opposite. I'm like, wow, that chick's in a bikini. I'm reading that comic.
You find out really what's important. So
Yeah, what's important? Yeah.
yeah, but thanks for having me. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it. This
thanks
was
for
fun.
coming. Guys, just check out the website. I very rarely say that this is a must comic. I love this comic. It rewards you for reading it over and over again. That there's like Fabrizio said, there's Easter eggs, and it's right up my alley. It's superheroes, it's occult, it's Lovecraft, and it's set in the 30s in New York. There's no other comic like it. I compare it to Hellboy, but it's not like Hellboy. That's just the closest that I can compare it to. It's such a good comic. I really, I went, I asked you to do a page of my comic. I bought art from you. I did that to 3 people so far.
I'm honored to have Horus in Heroic Tales.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
When you showed me the page, I've done everything but spoil the page, but it's so much fun, and the dialogue again, it's great. It's just great. Your page actually made me go through my comic and look at the dialogue again. I'm like, I can't have bad dialogue, and then that one page of Horace. It's so good. It's so
That's
good.
funny.
It's better. It's better. You colored it. It's perfect. It's so good. I can't wait for everybody to see it. And then
Yeah,
Matt
me too.
Bauer did another page that of the Sea Hippies.
It's so
Have you
funny.
seen that?
Yes, it's so great.
It's funny because I told him about it, but he had a work schedule, so he was just like, "Yeah, I probably won't get to it in 2 months. Is that enough time?" I was like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "What do you want?" I said, "I'll send you, some, what do they call it? Copy. I'll send you some copy for for some dialogue." And then I forgot. And then one day he just sent it to me complete. So, I just gave him the idea, and oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't tell him what to do, because it's a million times better than I thought. I can't wait.
So great.
And then Brian's doing a fun house ad. I can't wait to see that. He is so clever. He is so clever.
Those are the things that just make these books different than other books. And
it's so fun. If anybody told me I'd be working, next issue I'm working with Don Chin, Mike Gustovich, Josh Howard is I'm going to be working with Josh Howard. If people told me like 3 years ago I was going to be working with these legends and meeting people and working, it's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Comics are supposed to be fun. Or I got it. Oh, come on next week. We'll bitch about other people. How's that?
Is that sounds way better.
Yeah, fuck. Let's. Oh, I just cursed. Let's talk about crap that we don't like. So, guys, for the next 24 hours, Fabrizio and I will be hating on the Alkalite. Isn't it bad? Alkalite is the worst. Star Wars is dead. Let's rant about that. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, or like tap water, even something mundane. We'll just even go like.
You like tap water? What are you, an idiot? I like bottled water. You jerk.
Chicago has the worst tap water.
Fight about coffee brands. Let's just fight. I don't know. Comic books is fun. Comic books are fun.
We're having a blast. Who cares? I mean,
comics. It's in the word fun. But thanks a lot, guys. I could talk forever, and I got to go to bed. And this weather is killing me at work. Oh my God, it's just unbearable. I just got to get through 3 more months. That's it. Just
you can do it.
Yeah, it's unbearable. But thanks a lot, everybody. I'll see you. I don't think I have anything scheduled tomorrow, and I think Sunday I have Sunday Comics. I'm gonna do Marvel premiere. I think it's 47-48, the first appearance of Scott Lang as Ant-Man, beautifully drawn by Bird. I can't believe I haven't shown that comic yet. So good. All right, see you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.